Welcome into the Saints Insider Podcast. Today is Monday, January the 13th. I'm Zach Ewing, along with Matthew Paris, Luke Johnson, and Mickey Loomis punching bag, also known as Jeff Duncan down there at the end. We did just come from Mickey Loomis' press conference where, among other things, he borderline challenged you to a fight, Jeff.
He clarified it
He
wasn't
did
a
clarify
fight.
and said it wasn't a fight,
I
but
thought
he
he said
challenged.
checkers. I thought he went to checkers after that. Once he saw,
Did he say checkers?
Once he saw the physical
once he
specimen that
thought,
you were.
once he realized,
He'd have to get in line behind Mike Thomas.
yeah,
Did you start to take your jacket off or something and he got scared and then that's
he
why
saw the guns, the gun show.
What's what events?
So I said, forget checkers. Let's do chess here. The guy's an NFL general manager. We need to test him. Okay, Jeff Duncan versus
That might
Mickey.
be the problem. He's playing checkers.
Jeff Duncan versus Mickey Loomis in chess. He mentioned golf, so we'll throw golf. I don't know how
He'd
your golf.
definitely
is.
take him in golf.
Okay.
He'd wipe you.
He'd kill me.
wipe
Well,
the floor
Well,
with
then
you
what
golf.
do you want? You want to have
played,
pickleball or something?
Mickey played college basketball. He killed me in
Well, how
basketball,
about
even though I
pickleball?
played basketball.
Jeff wants to challenge him to a rap battle.
I'd take him in that.
And by the way, you got to have
outfish him.
It's
no
pretty
question.
obvious you got to have Madden franchises and see who does better as you go forward. A little Madden
I could
25.
definitely out angle him being from Oregon. I could take him on that. And I think I could take him in arm wrestling.
What about Greco-Roman wrestling?
Yeah, any physical activity. I take
Sumo
him.
wrestling.
Any hand-to-hand combat, I could take him. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, fellas.
It's the size of the fight in the dog.
Exactly.
All right.
Got that dog.
And that's a wrap, guys. I think that's the best pod we've ever done.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
Yeah. Today's episode of Saints Insider is sponsored by Bank Plus. Their banking decisions are actually made here in New Orleans by local bankers who know the community and take the time to know you. From small business to big business, home loans to bank anywhere technology, Bank Plus is here for New Orleans. Learn more at bankplus.net. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. We'll take a quick break. We are going to react in it'll be totally serious to the Mickey Loomis press conference. But first we need to take a break.
Nice bike.
Thanks. Can I get it back before Saturday?
That might be tough.
Whoa. Is it just you?
For now, let's take a look.
Hi, strawberry mango. Here you go. Thank you. I'll take another one.
There's no better place to parlay than Caesars Sportsbook. Parlay Builder gives you all the game day action from all across the league. Multiple games, legs, and props, all in one spot. It's so quick and easy, you can keep your focus on the games and your nachos. Or if you're focusing on one game, remember, you can place your same game parlays live during the action. Caesars Sportsbook, the only sportsbook app with Caesars rewards.
Okay, back on the Saints Insider and discussing Mickey Loomis' postseason press conference today. It's the first time that he's addressed the media since training camp. He has his weekly radio show on WWL. He's answered a question here or there, but this is really the first time that he sat down and allowed us and the other media covering the Saints to just kind of pepper him with questions. So lots to cover. Let's start with general takeaways. Matt, you and I briefly talked about this afterward. I was kind of struck by how positive he was after a 5-12 season and how he almost seemed to want to calm the waters of the Saints fan base. Was that your takeaway too?
I think so. He definitely wasn't as defiant this year as he was in last year. He definitely had more of a, he didn't bring any props with him, didn't have a note card to defend kind of Dennis Allen. But I just thought he was kind of confident in what the Saints had to offer. Didn't feel like he needed to sell this job. And interestingly, didn't really seem like they needed a lot of changes, which we can dive into, but I don't know. He kept his plans vague, but I don't know if he sees this team as needing a total teardown, which is, I think, what we would have said going in, like that he was going to say that. So some surprises, not surprises.
Yeah, he went. We had it timed at like 44 minutes. You can watch the whole thing. We have it on the Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel, so you can watch the whole thing. I'll put the link to that video in the description of this one. But yeah, he kind of repeated his line, Luke, about you have to look beyond the results. He said 5-12 is a problem, but he also said that he thinks the solution basically is with his regime.
Yeah, and he brought up the injury problem multiple times today. I mean, either getting asked about it directly, or just bringing it up on his own as a reason for why the team underperformed this year, as something they've got to look into, yada yada yada. But like I think you're right. I don't know if they're necessarily like taking the realistic look at where this roster is, based on what we heard today. They still think that they've got a competitive roster on their hands with they just need a couple more breaks. Definitely not like a sobering press conference today where it's like we got a lot of problems, we got to fix it. Like
There was no soul searching.
Even the salary cap stuff, which we've said is a big problem. You can't just like yada yada the salary cap today, which in some respects I respect it. I respect you for going up there and being like, look, we're sticking to our guns and this is what we do. This is how we think. This, etc. But like I'm having a hard time seeing it. Like the salary cap is a problem. Like they've already got $50 million in dead money on the books for two guys that on the 2025 books for two guys who weren't on the team this year, Jameis Winston and Michael Thomas, and a guy they just traded. It's going to cost them $30 million, Marshawn Lattimore, on the 2025 salary cap. That's a huge amount of money, and that's not even taking into account what is going to happen with Cam Jordan and Demario Davis and Derek Carr, and the list goes on. Veteran players who have uncertain futures here. I think it's, I don't know. It was kind of a strange, like everything's fine.
Yeah, we need to have
minutes.
a salary cap show specifically, but that stuck out to me. And then he also mentioned, Jeff, like, and turnarounds in the NFL happen all the time. They can happen quickly. And you're going, yeah, but you either need to have a quarterback you pick high in the draft. And he did mention, like, look, we're picking number 9. Are we going to have a chance to pick that high? To pick an impact player at that point, maybe not. But Jeff, you kind of warned in the last couple weeks, like, what you don't want to see is them say, look at those first 2 games and how everything was when we were all healthy and everything was good, and that means everything's okay. And that's, I mean, he didn't specifically mention the first 2 games, but that's kind of what the message was today.
Yeah, I thought he was somewhat more, I think he was humbled a little bit. I mean, I sensed that he wasn't quite as defiant, but I agree with Luke and Matt in that he definitely has a strong belief in what they do in the building. I think that's fair to say, and that could be a strength and a weakness at the same time, in that you don't necessarily respond to outside thinking or criticism. You stick to your guns, and that's certainly Mickey Loomis to a T. But there's also the blind spot that he kind of mentioned. It feels like they do have some blind spots. He wouldn't go into a lot of details, but I wouldn't use the word delusional, but there's a little of that. It feels like that what they believe in that building is clearly different than I think the outside perception of the team. And I think it's been that way for a number of years. I don't think it's any different this year, but the fact is that record's getting worse. It's not getting better. Salary cap's still an issue. And I think around the league, when you hear people mention the New Orleans Saints, their view of where the organization is at is clearly different than what Mickey Loomis thinks. Someone's going to be right, somebody's going to be wrong. But he clearly thinks they're better than what certainly I think, or what a lot of people outside the building think.
Well, that was the interesting part of this year's presser specifically, is because the results are catching up to them now, and they were wrong. You can blame injuries, but you have to look at your roster in complete totality. I thought one of the more interesting answers was when Luke asked him, hey, we asked you last year if the roster was old. You were pretty defiant about that. What do you think this year? And he pivoted to noting how many younger players played because of injury. That told me he thinks the roster's old. Like, I do think he made some concessions a little bit, even if he didn't come out and say them directly. So I do think, Jeff, to your point, they were humbled a little bit by 5-12, but I wonder overall, do they view that as an outlier, or I think they view that more as an outlier, which I don't know if that's an outlier.
Right. I think that's the best way to put it. I think he feels like it was almost like a fluke this past season. It's the sense I got that the injuries undermine them, not a gradual decline that maybe other people saw. He feels like maybe they were on the verge of breaking through and got undermined by injuries.
Yeah, I mean, look, they signed Ryan Ramczyk and Michael Thomas and Marshawn Lattimore and Alvin Kamara to huge contracts, all guys who were foundational cornerstone players for them. Really, all of them premier players at their position, young players, guys you expect to be the foundational pieces of your roster. And the only one who stayed healthy was the running back.
And he missed the last 4 games.
Right, but
And that's
like,
relatively speaking.
But like that's the one that's supposed to be the risky one, and he's the only one who stayed healthy.
Yeah.
So like they're like, I don't blame them for getting into this position, because like I would have made all of those same extensions 100 times out of 100 in that moment. But like, they've had a lot of these contracts where they've handed them out to players who've deserved them, and they've had some misfortune with that. But it's made a lot of these other mistakes that they've made just look a lot larger, because you can't count on the receiver you're paying $20 million a year or the tackle you're paying $20 million a year to be on the field. So I think that's probably coloring some of the way they look at it.
And on the flip side, they've let guys like Trey Hendrickson walk. Zach Bond, Mickey did say today they did offer Zach Bond
and
a contract.
I'm sure they offered Trey Hendrickson a contract. I'm sure they offered Caden Ellis a contract. But like, those, like in Bond's case, like he was going to be blocked.
Right.
Like,
they weren't using
would
him the way he wanted to
back?
be used.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's going to cash in. He signed a 1-year deal with Philly, right? Yeah, he's gonna be making a lot of money next year.
One thing I think that was at least speculated was that Mickey would address his own future, Jeff, and he did. That was actually the comment where he challenged you to whatever he challenged you to. I challenged you to a duel. He said he's not anywhere near thinking about retirement. He's 68 years old, but he feels like he has all his faculties. He said, and feels like he's still the man for the job. Still has a passion for it. And so anybody who's kind of hoping that Mickey was going to step into the background and say, I'll just become an advisor, let someone else take the reins, that is nowhere near happening, at least according to him.
Yeah, I would say the best way to put it is he sees himself as part of the solution, not part of the problem. And I think some fans see him as a problem in his management style, and the results outside of the Peyton Breeze era have not been, they haven't been that successful. I don't think they've ever made the playoffs without Breeze or Peyton on the team under Mickey Loomis. So I think their record's under 500. But I think he feels personally responsible to turn this thing around with this hire and get things right. I don't think Mickey Loomis has never thought about retirement. Matter of fact, I know that's not true. I know he's definitely thought about it. But I think he wants to project strength right now, clear-minded decision-making, and I think he wants to leave the organization in much better standing than it is in right now. And I think part of him, he admitted he's personally responsible for it getting to where it's at to some degree. He played, as Peyton would always say, everybody's got a lot of dirty hands. He's got dirty hands in this. So I think he wants to right the ship before he were to move on. I think he sees himself as solving this issue, not creating it.
That, of course, starts with the search for a new head coach. I mean, that's where that process has to start. And as we kind of pivot into that discussion, Mickey didn't say anything specific, obviously, about any candidate. It was actually kind of funny, the news about Mike McCarthy parting ways with the Dallas Cowboys came out in the middle of his press conference, actually toward the beginning of it, and he didn't even know about that. And as he stood up, he kind of said, is that right, McCarthy? Like he was obviously interested in that. We'll talk about McCarthy here in a few minutes. But But did anything he say, and obviously he's not going to mention any candidates by name or anything specific, but did anything he say stick out to you guys in terms of a hint or a direction for this coaching search?
Yeah, I think what stood out was he dismissed the notion that this team needed a clear break from the Sean Payton era. He said he didn't really know what that means. Thought of the Kanye West Jay-Z song.
He mentioned Dan Campbell and Sean Payton saying they both engineered turnarounds. Why would you not want to be a part of that tree?
Yes. Yeah, that's the big tell is you look at two of the more successful rebuilds in the NFL of late, the Detroit Lions, who are the NFC's #1 seed. The Saints have interviewed Aaron Glenn, their defensive coordinator. And then you look at the Broncos, who have Sean Payton, obviously. They made the playoffs this year. He doesn't necessarily see the Sean Payton era as a bad one. And frankly, I mean, why would they? That was their most successful stint in franchise history. It's just a matter of where you are at in the franchise right now and how desperately do you need something new. I think he didn't come out and say this outright, but I think reading in between the lines is that he sees that someone from the Payton tree could still provide that new perspective without cutting it completely.
Yeah, and I think that was the only bit of information we got out of today's press conference in relation to the head coaching search. Basically, anytime he was asked about it, he's like, "We're looking for the best coach."
Going through the process.
Well, I thought it was interesting, and this isn't earth-shattering. We all knew this, but maybe outside they didn't know. But it's pretty clear they have a brain trust right now with Jeff Ireland, Kai Harley, Mike Parrington, Randy Mueller, and Dave Ziegler now all involved with somewhat decision-making as far as a collaborative, what was he used collective vision, right? That was his big term today. That they're all involved. But it is interesting that he said, I thought, between those former general managers that are on the staff now.
4 of them, right?
Yeah, 4 of them.
Current and former.
Yeah, so that they do have connections all over the league. So I think it does push back a little bit on the notion that they don't have any outside views. You know, it makes a good point of like the fact that Dave Ziegler's been somewhere else and used to be in the Patriots tree. Randy's was with the Chargers for over a decade. So they do have people that have fresh perspective on how things are done in other operations now working for them in the last 2 years. I think they brought them in. So, and that they are going to be heavily involved. It sounds like heavily involved in this interview process and search process.
He also did mention that as far as assistant coaches go and coaches on staff, he said he's told them, and I'm thinking specifically of Clint Kubiak here because he's had a couple of interviews. He said that you guys have jobs, you're employed by the Saints right now, but it's going to be the new head coach's decision, as it should be, whether you remain on staff or not, and you can feel free to take interviews as I approve them.
I think should only apply to the offensive coaches, I think, right?
And Darren Rizzi, who interviewed for the Jets job.
Right. I think that several of the defensive coaches, their contracts are expired, and they might still technically be under contract, but it's expiring soon. Anyways, yeah, it's kind of like an interesting limbo spot to be in for these coaches. For Clint Kubiak, you have to take these interviews, and because Saints. Let's say that Saints hire Joe Brady, right, to come in, and he wants to run his own offense, and he's going to be the play caller. And does Clint want to stay on for that? Yeah, probably not. But like, if the Saints hire Aaron Glenn, and Aaron Glenn's like, we think the Saints offense did a great job last year, we want to keep it's like a really weird.
Yeah, but if the Browns offer you their job first, then do you take that or do you?
Well, yeah, that's why the Saints have to like let them interview for it, but they have to also be okay if they get poached away. The coach is going to have to come in and hire somebody new.
Yeah,
even if the coach wanted to keep Clint Kubiak on staff.
It's you feel for those guys and their families So that's kind of the awkward part of this. But the coaching search, obviously, the next big step. And I want to pivot into that discussion. The big development, of course, being that Mike McCarthy is now on the market. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. First, want to let you know Saints Insider is sponsored by Associated Grocers. Saints fans, Associated Grocers is hiring. If you're looking to join a team dedicated to supporting independent grocers, apply today. Your future starts here. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back talk about Mike McCarthy and where he fits in the Saints head coaching search after this. Welcome back to the Saints Insider. So as mentioned, during the Mickey Loomis press conference, actually just a couple minutes into it, news broke Mike McCarthy and the Dallas Cowboys are parting ways. This one was starting to look like he was going to stick around. There were some reports last week that they were talking about a contract extension, but he's not. He's on the market now. I think his contract officially expires Wednesday maybe, or maybe they just cut it today. I don't know. But
I think it expires.
They're allowing him to speak with teams right away.
yeah. I think it was maybe it's even tomorrow. I think the 14th was the date that
I think it's
heard.
midnight.
Tuesday night. So anyway, point is he's on the market, and now you also have a mighty big fish in the pond of teams searching for head coaching candidates. The Patriots hired Mike Vrabel, but now the Dallas Cowboys have an opening. So how does this change things for you guys? Jeff, we'll start with you. I know you've mentioned McCarthy for a while. I mean, we expect him to be a serious candidate in New Orleans.
Yeah, I think I said I'll be shocked if he's at least not interviewed and is considered one of the top people. I know Mickey Loomis respects Mike. I mean, they were here together in the organization for a number of years when Mike was the OC on Jim Haslett's staff. I know they've spent time together at owners' meetings, even socially. Like I think they play golf together down in Florida. So I will be surprised if he's not heavily considered just because of his track record. And I think more importantly, Mickey Loomis's comfort level with him, knowing Mike as well as he does and knowing that they probably are like-minded in how they view building this or tackling this job. Mike certainly is aware of the strengths and weaknesses of this organization, which I don't think a lot of people would know nearly as well as him. So I think there's a lot of reasons why Mike will be strongly considered, but then there's also the thought process of do you just want to kind of get somebody completely new. It didn't sound like that's a strong consideration for Mickey. It sounds like he almost prefers somebody that he knows. So I'll be shocked if Mike's not in here, maybe by the end of this week or sooner.
Yeah, I mean, I think he vaulted to the top of my probables list.
Ahead of Aaron Glenn?
It's him and Aaron Glenn. You know, I think I have him slightly above Aaron Glenn. Look. Say what you want about Mike McCarthy. He's got a lot of stuff that makes you kind of question him. The playoff history, especially since the Super Bowl, has not been very good. But I mean, the guy has won a Super Bowl, and he's been very successful throughout 18 years as a head coach, 9 playoff appearances. In 13 years in Green Bay, something like a .618 winning percentage in Green Bay. Went 12-5, 3 straight years in Dallas. He's won at every step of the way. And granted, he's had MVP or All-Pro quarterbacks for much of that. But I think it goes beyond just having a good quarterback. A lot of teams have had good quarterbacks and done nothing with it. He's sustained success, and I think that makes him a very attractive candidate. Even if Vrabel was still on the market, this is the most accomplished coach on the market.
No other head coaching candidate out there has a Super Bowl ring, assuming Bill Belichick doesn't re-enter himself in the conversation.
Right.
Pete Carroll.
That's true. Pete Carroll, if you include him, although I haven't heard of him interviewing anywhere. So
Bears and Raiders.
Anyway, that does lead me into a discussion of the Cowboys are now on the market. They're obviously a high-profile situation. They're going to be attractive for a lot of head coaching candidates. How does that aspect of it change for the Saints?
I don't think it does much. Interestingly, like, because the Cowboys didn't do this sooner, they're actually behind the 8 ball. Because now if they wanted to talk to Ben Johnson or Aaron Glenn, they now have to wait until their season's over because they can't submit. They had to do it before
During the bye week,
during
yeah.
the bye week for them. So, they can look for other coaches, but the NFL has like a lot of specific rules and stuff in place that I think they're going to be behind the 8 ball a little bit. But I think McCarthy, to me, would be kind of that bridge coach that we were talking about earlier in terms of the Saints don't view their roster as being like, if they view that they're still close or can be competitive with the right steps, seems like maybe the guy to help get them there the fastest. I mean, say what you want about his postseason success or lack thereof, not counting this or after the Super Bowl, but he knows how to win games in the regular season, and
the Saints don't, right?
yeah, that might count for something with these guys.
I'll say the other thing about him that I think we overlooked a little bit in Dennis Allen's tenure as maybe a weakness is Mike's ability to attract good coaches. I think he can hire good coaches. He has hired good coaches, put out good staffs. The players, coaches under him have gone on to success. And then the other thing is I'd say just certainly my dealing with him, he's a great developer of quarterbacks. I mean, one of the reasons why Aaron Rodgers and Dak Prescott were good is because of Mike McCarthy. I think that's way overlooked in the league. They act like he just inherited these great quarterbacks. No, he developed those quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers was taken late in the first round, and Mike developed him and made him into a great quarterback. So I think
Dak Prescott was pretty good when Mike McCarthy got there.
Was he? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'd say
but to Jeff's point, though, I think
your point, yeah.
like Dak had some of his best years.
Yeah.
He became an MVP candidate last year. Under
Yeah,
McCarthy.
I mean,
if you talk to any, Matt Hasselbeck, Mark Brunell, guys that played under him, his off-season programs for quarterbacks. The Saints fans know. Aaron Brooks was here, had record-setting years here, and then as soon as Mike left for 49ers, his production dropped off a cliff, and he was gone a year later. So Mike would be a great choice to help attract good quarterbacks too, because he certainly knows how to put together a program to develop those guys. So, but the most important thing is the fact that I think that Mickey Loomis likes him and respects him. I think that at least gets him high on their list.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to have a couple of weeks here before anything happens, I guess, unless the Saints were to hire. I guess McCarthy, that's the one thing about McCarthy. He could be hired any time now, right? Like he wouldn't have to.
No.
well,
The Rooney Rule stuff in particular.
Rooney, yeah, okay, Rooney
so
Rule.
the Saints would have to comply with the Rooney Rule, and they've interviewed coaches of color, but they've interviewed them virtually, and virtual interviews don't count until
Have to
the
do it in
Rooney
person.
Rule. So once you can start interviewing coaches in person January 20th for guys under contract, that's like next week would probably be more so the timeline. Like I'd be floored if they hired McCarthy this week, for instance, just because of the timing of it all.
Because they'd have to pull a sneaky move like the
Yeah.
Patriots did.
Right, they'd have to interview Joe Woods and
Pepper Hamilton.
Yeah.
Now, and I think you have to interview Aaron Glenn, right? Like that. You
Yes.
don't just ignore that.
Absolutely
Yeah.
not. I think Aaron Glenn might still be he might still be candidate number one
Right,
for the
sure.
Saints. It just depends on what direction you want it. Like to Matt's point, do you want somebody who's proven and has a shortest window to make you as competitive as possible right now? Then it's Mike McCarthy. Do you want to take a big swing on somebody who maybe could be your coach for the next 20 years? Then it's maybe Aaron Glenn, or Joe Brady. But you have to continue to go down the road with those guys.
Right. And if either one of them makes the Super Bowl, then the next time you said January 20th, but probably you're not interviewing them in person until the week after
you can
the
interview them
AFC NFC championship games.
during their bye,
Right.
after the 27th.
Yeah, between the conference championship games and Super Bowl week. And so I'm thinking, even if Mickey Loomis is sitting here thinking, I really like Mike McCarthy and he's probably going to end up being my guy, the process still has to stretch out to the end of the month, almost no matter what.
And I think the way you look at it is if you think Aaron Glenn or Joe Brady or whoever that ascending assistant is the next Sean Payton, is the next great head coach of the New Orleans Saints, then you wait and get the right guy. I mean, who cares if you have to wait 2 more weeks or whatever it is? But you have to look at it the way maybe Mickey Loomis looked at the last time. Well, not the last time, but when he hired Sean Payton, one of the people he interviewed was Mike Martz. Mike Martz had been a Super Bowl, right? So, and Mike Sherman had been a head coach, also interviewed. And he went with Sean Payton, the unproven commodity, because he knocked his socks off in the interview process. And so I think certainly Aaron Glenn, who they know very well and who impressed them last time, has to be a strong contender. But there might be someone else that comes out of the woodwork here that we don't know that is the next Sean Payton, at least in their minds. So you kind of know what you got with Mike McCarthy. There's a lot of unknown elements with some of these other candidates.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to wrap things up. We'll probably be back later this week. Maybe we'll do that salary cap podcast I talked about and how this roster gets reshaped. But any other final thoughts, guys, on Mickey Loomis' press conference and where the Saints go from here? Covered it all?
Yeah, I think so. I just think that any sort of change that we were going to see out of this organization is going to come on the coaching staff and the roster, the personnel side. I don't think we're going to see much change out of the front office outside of maybe the way they're considering doing things. It sounded like all of his top lieutenants are coming back, unless they get hired away for a GM job somewhere else, which is possible. But like Kai Harley's still gonna be doing the cap, Jeff Ireland's still gonna be doing the draft, and Michael Parrington's still gonna be doing the pro scouting, and Mickey Loomis is still gonna be the guy overseeing it all. So, that's gonna be the group that's trying to usher this Saints franchise back in the right direction.
If you wanted the down to the studs rebuild, it's not going to happen.
He did focus pretty intensely on the injury thing. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some changes there.
Training staff.
Feels like that was and it's kind of interesting because he talked about that being such an important factor. They had to take a deep dive in it, but then he also kind of backtracked and said, like, it also sounds like it's just a fluke, like a fluke
coincidence.
season.
And he mentioned the Pelicans also in the same building have had even more injury problems than the Saints, and that he and David Griffin have gotten together and they just sort of shrugged their shoulders and said, and he did say they're going to do a deep dive into it, but that his, I guess, intuition is that it's just a coincidence.
Well, because the year before, he makes a good point. They were using the same programs the year before, and they didn't have those injuries. So maybe I think what he said that was a little illuminating or enlightening was that maybe they messed up in the evaluation process of the players. That was interesting. He didn't really go into detail there, but maybe what he's saying is in the draft process or the personnel procurement process, they're not identifying potentially injury-prone players.
Yeah. Anything from you, Matt?
I think if you're a Saints fan and you entered the day feeling frustrated, you don't feel better after that presser. And I don't know necessarily if there was anything Loomis could have said short of "I'm resigning" that would have made them feel better. But I just think, like, there were some questions that needed to be answered. He answered them. It doesn't necessarily give you the most encouraging feel about the future, but I don't know. I thought there were enough interesting takeaways. There's just, with them, they're going to have to prove it because, like Jeff mentioned earlier, it's going to be on a collision course of, is it their way that's right, or is it the NFL? And we saw 1 year of it this past year, and they weren't right, but they'll have another swing at it here because there's not going to be those broader changes at large.
Yeah, the only thing that's going to make Saints fans feel better is winning, and that can't be done until the fall now. And Mickey Loomis is obviously betting on himself to be the guy to turn it around. So we shall see where that goes. Like I said, we'll be back later this week with another episode. Our thanks to you. In the meantime, like I said, you can watch the full Mickey Loomis press conference. I have the link in the description of this video. And hope you enjoy the coverage. Hit the like button for us, subscribe to the channel, and share with your friends. For our producer, Norman Bell, he's Matthew Paris, Luke Johnson, and Jeff Duncan, I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for watching The Saints Insider.